before we get to this year's draft, I do want to ask you a little about you. Can you tell me about Mel Kiper Sr.? Because I don't know much about him.
Yeah, he was really one of the key reasons, or the key reason why I'm where I am today, because of the fact you had the support, Skip, from somebody who, without that support financially, there wouldn't have been a book. I mean, I'm a 17, 18-year-old kid who want to start a business. I didn't have any money. I had no ability to start a business. He did. He kind of invested in my idea, my passion, and was there to see it grow and develop and putting stamps on envelopes, whatever was preparing the book.
Wow.
I always did the work in terms of the book, and he would be down there with me and phone would ring. I'd say, okay, can you remember, I'm typing at a typewriter, Skip. A typewriter, well, whiteout. Okay, with whiteout, if I made a mistake, I had to redo something. It's not, kids don't get that, right? And the phone would ring and say, no, you got to get it. The customers are calling to order your report. They want to talk to you. And I developed a lot of friendships, great relationships with fans over the years. I'd do Myron Cope show in Pittsburgh, Skip, and I'd get 50, 60, 70 calls as soon as that show was over. The phones would light up like a Christmas tree. So in terms of my father, he loved sports. He was a really good, outstanding baseball player back in the day. Would have probably been a major league player had it been for a shoulder injury. And back in those days, you weren't making anything, so he had to give it up to go get a job. And then the rest is history. But he coached. He had been very active in baseball his whole life, really. And through that passion, and my cousins were great soccer players. And, so at the end of the day, sports was part of our life and a huge part. And I thought the analytical part, Skip, the evaluation part of football was something that intrigued me from day one. I had been doing analytics about football in the draft long before it even occurred and was talked about. So I think that was the aspect of watching it at the big dish on the roof at Ramblewood Road back in Baltimore when nobody else did, to have access to college football games. I spent 30 hours a week calling schools to get basic statistical information you couldn't get on the internet. So, but like I say, for my father, it was without him being able to do all the business stuff and handle all that and putting the ads in Pro Football Weekly and football news and sporting news and doing all that was the reason why I'm here today doing what I'm doing right now.
In what neighborhood in Baltimore did you grow up in?
Right in Baltimore, right in Loch Raven, right on 1935 Ramblewood Road was the address, and it was the corner house, and we had the backyard, nice backyard. Had my godmother, Miss Helen, Mr. Nick next to me, and friends. It was like the fence was only one divide. I used to bang on the wall with Tim next door. Tim Madgar is a great ophthalmologist now in Baltimore. Bang on the wall to let us know, let's go out and play ball in the alley. Okay, in the alley and at Ramblewood Road. So just a great neighborhood to grow up in. Went to St. Matthew's. As a Polish Catholic here in Baltimore, went to St. Matthew's from first grade all the way up. Then, of course, Calvert Hall for high school. But everybody in the neighborhood was either St. Matthew's or then Calvert Hall or Loyola or somewhere. So it was a great neighborhood where we went outside. It was always somebody to go play. We were playing ball almost from morning till night. So if not, we were next door with Tim. We had Be a Manager, if you remember that, playing that game, which was a great game. You kept the stats and you did your thing there for baseball. So it was sports 24 hours a day, Skip, nonstop.
And what did your dad do for a living after he left baseball?
Well, he was in the claw machines where were put into restaurants and bars. He had the claw machine business, which he ran was Maryland Novelty Company, which he had that business. He was a real estate agent as well. He coached baseball. So he wore a lot of hats. And of course, he gave that up after, he had retired basically from just about everything. Then is when I started putting out the reports. And he could still do the real estate part-time, but the business and the claw machines were basically a full-time, which became somewhat part-time, and gave up coaching after that. But he was there every step of the way. I never forget, Skip, we were talking about the business. And I said, well, we got to get a secretary. We got to get an office. We got to get tons of phones, toll-free numbers. Remember toll-free number back? He said, wait a minute. Your office is in the basement here. I'm handling all the secretaries, and there's your phone. It's a landline with one line coming in. Overhead will kill your business before it even gets started. So we got to do it this way, do it the right way, and we did, and we developed it. And before he passed away in 1988, at least he saw me at ESPN doing what I was doing.
Absolutely.
He saw the business doing great, and he knew at the age of 64 that everything was in great shape. So at least I can say, looking back, he saw everything from the business standpoint and saw it grow. And without him, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing.
Did he push you to play more baseball than football?
Well, I hurt my shoulder right before high school. Nobody knew it. He, to the day he died, didn't know it.
Really?
Nobody knew it. And that destroyed any chance I had for baseball. And nobody in the school, nobody knew that my arm was shot. I mean, I couldn't even lift it. My elbow had popped pitching right before high school. When I got into the 6th inning, I was tired and I just felt it. He always said, if you get tired, take yourself out. So I didn't say anything. I said, how'd I get away with it? I said, I got hit by another guy. Kid was in one deck circle and hit it with a bat. My elbow, and that's how he knew I had an elbow, but not the severity of what it was. So at that point in time, hitting, obviously I had no strength in my right arm to hit, no strength to throw. We were warm up. We had a game, Skip. We won the first game of that playoff 1-0. I got into the 7th inning, got through it somehow. And then the next game, it was a 2 out of 3. I'm playing shortstop. We lost that game. Then we're playing the final game on a Saturday afternoon at 12 o'clock up at Mercy. We had fields up at Mercy High School. I couldn't throw the ball 10 yards, Skip. I kept telling the guy, come on a little closer. First inning, good friend, my Keith Edmonds was leading off for the team we were playing. Hit a ball right back up the middle. Went right through me. I was seeing stars. I didn't even bend. I think I gave up 6-8 runs. I was done. And then I had to play another game for a traveling team that same day for Gus Cesanero, who was a great manager. Mr. Gus was the best. I had to go play third base for him. About 3 hours later, after that game was over. And I played that whole summer with an arm that couldn't do anything. I don't know how I got. So to make a long story short, my career ended before I even got to high school, before I even got to Calvert Hall. But nobody knew it. Nobody knew the reason why I was done. And that led me, my father even said, without giving up on baseball and not being able to play at the level I knew I could, anywhere close to it, I would have never probably got into this. No. So this pushed me to do something like this early on. Bill Karpovich, a legendary soccer coach at Calvert Hall. He was another encouraging part of this. When I was at Calvert Hall, he said, hey, you're the king of stats next to me. Karp always said, next to me, you're the king of stats. And so he knew my sophomore, junior year at Calvert Hall where my future was going to be, which was somewhere in sports and probably in football.
So I'm assuming through 8th grade, you were a pretty good athlete, that you did play pitcher and shortstop. So obviously you were pretty good. Is that fair?
I was an okay baseball player. Yeah. I could hold my own, and I had a chance, I think, to go do some things moving through high school and into college. Had I not had that injury, I think anybody who had played with me back in those days saw that and was aware of that. I don't think I'm overrating that or overstating it. But bottom line is, Skip, after that, it was over. But nobody knew it. I think he really regressed. He really lost whatever edge he had, whatever ability he had was gone, because it was gone. Okay. And like I said, it was on my stupidity not to have it corrected. I probably could have had a surgery and had it corrected, been out for probably 2 years then, but I didn't. But that really, everything happens for a reason, Skip. And because of that, my father always said, it happened for a reason, because now you're doing something that, had you been able to play baseball, you would not have been doing. I would never thought twice about it. I would have been moved on from this. So this led me to doing it because I had time. I wasn't playing. So I had time to really put this together, had a vision for what it could be, because I knew how important the draft was to the success of an NFL team. That's the only way you could improve your team from this year to next year was via the draft. You know that, Skip. Remember, it was 17 rounds, then it became 12 rounds. Now it's 7 rounds. But back in the day, it was 12 rounds back in those days. So it was the only way. There was no free agency. There were no trades. If you want to improve your team, the draft was the only way to do it. And fans couldn't see anybody. Remember back in those days, it was 1 game, 2 games on a Saturday televised, Skip. You couldn't watch college football. No. You didn't know anything about these players. So I'm thinking, okay, the fans of the Steelers, the fans of the 49ers, fans of the Broncos, they want to know who these guys are that we're drafting. Let's see who's available. And the college fans want to know, how do you grade the college kids that went to Georgia, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, UCLA? They want to know. So I really felt there was a market for it. Then you talk about who was key. Ernie Accorsi was key.
He was.
You know Ernie. Ernie was the one. I got to know Ernie when I was 16 at a Colt camp. He encouraged me to do it.
How did you get to know him? You just walked up and introduced yourself?
I had typed out reports. Typed some handwritten reports on players, and I'd just say, Mr. Accorsi, take a look, see what you think. And he wouldn't tell me to get the heck out of here. He would take the reports, and he actually read those reports. Then I'd type them all up. I'd do a little more formally, type everything up. Do it for NFL teams, do it for college kids I was watching. And so the time I was 16 to 18, I started the business. So from 18, 19, I was sending him the actual reports. At 23, age 23, it was February, it would have been February of when I was 23 of 1983. Prior to the 83 draft, Ernie called me and said, hey, I really want this summer for you to come work for me. Would you be willing to do that? I said, sure. I have to give up the books, give up the blue book, the draft reports, give up the business. I said, what do you want me to do, Ernie? He said, just go through the draft. I want you to do there. We're down at the Baltimore Convention Center. Go down there. A lot of Colt fans will be there. I want you to just talk about the players, educate the fans on what's going on with the draft. And then this summer during training camp, we'll introduce you as an assistant to me, not assistant GM, but just an assistant to Ernie in the personnel department. So he said, okay, and I had to get checked out by the NFL. Security from the NFL came down to Ramblewood Road and talked to me. Came down from New York, got cleared to go into the NFL. That was the year that they drafted John Elway, traded John Elway without Ernie's knowledge. There was talk about the Colts leaving. He didn't want to bring me in as his guy, knowing he would probably be leaving. I'm a Baltimore guy. They would probably be leaving to go somewhere else. So he knew all that. He called me, Skip, said, I can't bring you in. He said, he told me what was going on. He said, it wouldn't be right. I said, what do you want me to do, Ern? He said, keep doing what you're doing. You got a great business going. Fans crave your information. No harm, no foul. We never introduced you as nobody knows you were coming to work for the Colts. Just keep doing your books, keep doing your reports. And I did. 5 months later, got a call from ESPN to come up and interview. Had Ernie, and I bring this up because it's Ernie Accorsi, how key he was. Without him caring about this 23-year-old kid, he would have brought me in, said, if I stay, I stay. If I don't, I don't. Kuiper will be fine. Well, I wouldn't have been fine. And he knew that. So without him doing that, I'd have been with the Colts, been let go. Somebody else would have had the ESPN job because I went up and interviewed for the job where I wouldn't have had I been with the Colts. And the rest is history, Skip. So Ernie Accorsi played a critical role in being not only one of the best friends I've ever had in his lifetime, but somebody that actually gave a daggone about a kid that he didn't have to care about at that point in time. He was worrying about his own future. He didn't know where his future would lie. He didn't know where he'd be after that. Yet he cared enough about me to give me a call and say, hey, I can't do it.
Okay. Was there any in your playing background football involved, or was it all baseball?
All baseball. My father basically said, you're baseball. That's it. Now, hey, I was out throwing a football, playing football with all the guys, doing all the things and all the sports. Like I say, my cousins, Tommy Mulford, Kevin Mulford, great soccer players at Calvert Hall. Tommy ended up he's in the Loyola University Sports Hall of Fame for baseball and soccer. Tommy Mulford is. Kevin, great career as well, but great soccer players. Kevin was an outstanding baseball player as well. Gave that up. This concentrated on soccer. Tommy played both soccer and baseball. Great at Calvert Hall. Phenomenal at Loyola. Like I said, in the Loyola University Hall of Fame for sports. So it was a sports family. We went down to shore, down on the Severn River. My grandparents had a property bought in 1950. We go down. It was the family place to go, and all we did on those two fields is play ball. Whatever it was, that's what we did. We played ball, and it was great competition because I had two cousins that were gifted, a heck of a lot more gifted athletically than I was. So Tommy and Kevin kind of set the tone for what it took. Tommy had a rocket arm. I remember he'd say, throw it a little harder, throw it a little. He could throw the ball. He was a shortstop center fielder. Like I say, Kevin could have been a heck of a baseball player. I told Kevin and Tommy, but they could have been punters, kickers in the NFL. And guess what? You know who was a punter? A good friend of mine growing up, Sean Landetta.
Oh,
I used to go down to Mount Pleasant, and we'd have the grass would be that high, Skip. And I'd go down there charting his hang time when he was coming out of Towson State University. Played for the great Phil Albert. And he was a soccer player up to his final year of high school. And Sean was preparing for the draft. I'd be down there with Sean. And he ended up going to the USFL and became a tremendous, I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Sean Landetta should be. Everybody remembers the Giants and the career he had, the longevity, the consistency, rock solid. Sean, like I said, we played ball together. I was the third baseman. Okay. I mean, I played second base. He played third base. Archie Noha, great friend of ours, great ball player, played shortstop for Lock Raven Optimist, and I knew Sean my whole life. We played ball together coming up, and we're great friends to this day, as Archie is as well.
Okay, so why didn't you go into analyzing the baseball draft as opposed to the NFL draft?
I love football more.
Really?
I loved the game more. I loved everything about it more. I don't know what it was. It was something drew me. And it wasn't because of anybody in the family. Like I said, cousins were soccer, baseball, father all baseball. There wasn't any football really in the family. It was baseball and soccer. And everybody else played the other sports, but not to the level saying, I'm going to go and play it in college or beyond. So it was none of that. It was just, I think, the fact that you could evaluate and you could be able to, and it was the draft. And remember, the draft in baseball, wasn't the same.
No.
Yeah. You didn't get the return on your investment right away. Some guys never got out of the minor leagues, a different entity entirely. So for football, being as many rounds as it was, as many players being evaluated, and like I said before, the only way you improve your team from one year to the next is via the draft. And I loved the game. And I loved, I was thinking about going the coaching route because I loved the teaching aspect of it, the technical aspect of it.
Yep.
But not having the background as a player, I felt like, okay, that'll be a little more difficult. But scouting, you think about it. Ernie was great in golf. Ernie was a great golfer at Wake Forest. Ernie, of course he was. Not football. Ernie was a great golfer. And you thought about a lot of the guys, I knew that they didn't necessarily have to be the football background to be in that. So I felt like, okay, this is an avenue I can go. Coaching, they'll say, where'd you play? No, can't coach. Although some do now. Some do coach that weren't players coming through the ranks. So, but at the time, I thought scouting personnel might be the best way. And plus, I thought the fans, it would be a business based on the draft reports and the evaluation of players. And that written material would be something for fans that love college football, love the NFL, the draft, would all gravitate to.
Okay. 2 pioneers I want to ask you about before we proceed on your timeline. Gil Brandt, the draft master of the Dallas Cowboys, team I grew up loving. He was so far ahead of the curve and ahead of the field through the 60s because he was Mel Kiper. He got out and beat the Bushes. He got to know the trainers and the assistant trainers and the secretaries at every college. And while everybody else seemed to be drafting out of Street and Smith magazine, Gil was beating them to the punch, to the Hollywood Hendersons at Langston State University in the middle of Oklahoma. And yet Gil didn't even play high school football and was a former baby photographer when Tex Schramm brought him along from L.A. to Dallas to start the expansion Dallas Cowboys. Did that resonate with you when you got into the business? You said, well, Gil's been pretty good at this, right? Did that hit home to you?
1,000%. You hit it, Skip. The fact that the baby photographer, right? Yeah. And the fact without the football. And I got a letter. I got letters from everybody in the NFL that were handwritten. George Young used to write me handwritten because what I would do is I would send the draft reports out to everybody in the NFL, GMs, personnel directors, whoever, head coaches, right? Owners, didn't matter. And I'd have a cover letter saying, I'd appreciate any suggestions, opinions about the report, ways I can improve it. And George would write me handwritten because he was Calvert Hall, I'm Calvert Hall, George Young, handwritten with the Giants. And I got Don Shula, letter back. Lamar Hunt checked from the Chiefs, ordering the report. Letters from Bill Walsh, my great friend Jack Faulkner with the Rams. Gil Brandt. The list goes on and on and on. I had the letters back. Of course, Ernie would sometimes, if he didn't call, he would have typed up letters and written letters. But the letters are back there. I love that they're back there. I look at them. I always look back, and Kim and I, my wife, would look back and say, "Look at this. Look at what they were saying back in the day." And everybody responded. And they gave me great suggestions on ways to improve it and things I could add to it. But definitely, Gil, with the fact that he didn't have that, and Ernie with the golf, and all those things led me to feel like I got a shot, Skip.
You got a shot.
Credibility in this business. If you work hard, you do what you got to. You put the big dish on the roof. Big dish on the roof at Ramblewood Road. You're spending 30 hours a week on a phone calling schools for basic statistical information I couldn't get on the internet. So I say to kids now, Skip, all those little sayings on their shirts just have 3 words: pay your dues. Pay your dues, do the work. We didn't know. My father lost money. First 3 years in this business, he lost money. He never knew if it would make a penny. And believe me, my father worked hard to get every dollar he got. We were living on Ramblewood Road in Baltimore, Maryland. And to me, to have that investment in something, he didn't even know if it would ever make a penny. It was pretty amazing to take that chance. When just a kid's dream and a passion of a kid. And it led to him seeing it.
He was the entrepreneur in the family. He was the go-getter. He was the driving force.
I was clueless, Skip. I had no idea about business, about putting ads in these magazines, how to do it, who to go to. The fact that what I wanted was what every kid. I want a secretary. I want an office. I want this. No. Basement's your office. I'll get you a desk. I'll make it look really nice down there for you. Phones are here. I'm your secretary. I'm your businessman. I'll handle that. You just worry about writing reports, doing the work, and I'll handle everything else.
You were blessed to have that man in your life looking over you. Okay, another pioneer, and you're going to have to help me with the pronunciation of his name because I never pronounced it out loud, but it was Joel, either Buxbaum or
Joel Bushbaum.
How do you say it? Bush.
I've heard it different ways,
Okay,
but Joel Bucksbaum Bush, but Joel, I got to know at the draft, Skip. We'd finished the draft at ESPN. The next day, as you know, we weren't televising it. We were only doing day one. And I'd go down to hang with the reporters and talk to my friends in the NFL, in the league office. And it would be usually Sue Robichek, Sue was always there with the NFL and talk to everybody that was just basically hanging out. And all the reporters were there. And Joe would always be there. And it was great to have a chance to talk to him because he was doing a phenomenal job with Pro Football Weekly and started this business and had it rolling. And nobody, I know Bill Belichick and a lot of people in the league revered Joe and the information that he provided and the research he did.
Yeah. No, but he wasn't gregarious that I know of, and he wasn't a TV guy. So your breakthrough is you took it to television at age 24, right?
23.
That was 23. Yeah, you broke through, and I'm not sure because John Walsh wasn't there yet. Who hired you originally at ESPN? Who had the brainstorm?
That was Bill Fitz.
Really? Okay.
Bill Fitz was the producer of the draft. It was funny. I got a call from Bill Fitz to come up because what happened was Greg Marotta, I don't know if Greg was a player agent. And Greg knew about my books, and we had talked because he had represented players. And he said he was having lunch with Bill. And I didn't know anything about that. Remember, ESPN was just in their infancy. He was having lunch with Bill, and he said Doug Wilkinson was doing the draft and is retiring. And we need some. He said, gosh, I got a guy who puts out draft reports. It's right up his alley. Give him a call, at least talk to him. Got a call to come up and interview, went up to Bristol. They sat me in the middle of a room, asked me for an hour questions from various different people. And I went home. Had no clue what happened. Got a call that I had gotten that position, and Bill Fitz offered me that position. That was the '84 draft. I was 23 at the time. Didn't turn 24 till July of that year, and did that draft. Actually, Skip, it kind of works in unison with Shedeur Sanders because Shedeur is now talking about where he's going to go slide in the draft. I had Boomer Esiason ranked third on my big board, third on the board. I'm at ESPN first year. This 23-year-old guy. I got Boomer third. We're sitting through the draft. Bengals have 3 picks, not taken. We get into the second round. He's finally taken. We interviewed Boomer. Chris Berman and I did. Bob Lee was right there. Talked to Boomer. Talked about Dan Fouts, great Johnny Unitas, all the great quarterbacks that slid, right? That went later in the first round. Boomer was not happy, but we finished that. A couple picks later, we left the draft, signed off the draft in the second round, and went to a tractor pull or speedboat race, Skip, in 1984. Okay? But the thing was, I left that draft. I walked out. Chris Berman, Boomer, and Bob Lee walked me out, got into a car, went to Bradley International Airport, right?
Yeah.
I thought I was done. I had Boomer third. He went in the second round. I said, they're never going to bring me back for 1985, right? I thought I was one and done. I really did, thinking, okay, I had my shot at ESPN. I did my year. If you remember, look at that draft. I was whispering. I had no TV capability to really do that job to the level that ESPN wanted. I had never been in front of a camera in my life. I'd done radio with the late, great John Stedman back in Baltimore, but never TV.
Great. Yeah.
So I'm on TV, and all Chris said to me, just look at me, forget about the camera, just talk to me like we're having a conversation. And I did it, and I hit one thing, Skip. This is what happened. This is what saved me. The Boomer Esiason, third, Boomer ends up being a really good quarterback, right?
Did he? Yeah.
Really good quarterback in the NFL. And I knew Boomer being at Maryland. I watched him. I studied him. I knew this Maryland Terrapin left-hander Boomer Esiason, right? With that swagger and that rocket arm. Well, turns out to be a heck of a quarterback, right? Could have won a Super Bowl if one for Montana in that last drive, right?
Absolutely. Agreed.
Right? So what happens there is you think about where we were with that whole thing. That year, you had to have something happen. Greg Bell was running back at Notre Dame. I had heard through some of my connections that Greg Bell could maybe be a possibility for the Buffalo Bills, but not where they're picking in the middle of first, by maybe trading down. So when the Bills were up in the middle of first, I said on the air, I think the Bills could look to trade down here. They traded down. Get that? I think they'll look at Greg Bell, running back out of Notre Dame. They picked Greg Bell, running back out of Notre Dame. Had a good career, right? Like Rudy Martzke, who was a great friend of mine. You know Rudy.
I know him well.
Rudy Martzke on the air, and I didn't know Rudy at the time. We had not become great friends yet. Rudy Martzke said on the air, hey, this Mel Kiper seems to have some really good ideas. What's going on? That was a great. So Rudy gave me, this kid with no TV experience, credibility, immediate credibility. And I thank Rudy for that. So, he had always known how much I appreciated what he did, because I think Rudy who was the voice of the media and
He was.
coverage, and with a USA Today, right? Skip, you know that.
Oh.
For Rudy Martzke to say that, but it's not like he didn't know. He didn't know this 23-year-old kid who had never been on TV before. Yet he made that comment, which I think resonated and certainly helped me immensely.
By the way, I covered a Cowboy game at Buffalo the next year, and Greg Bell ran them off the field, just to your point. So, he was something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now came the Bill Tobin conflict, which I guess you can argue helped put you on the map, although I thought you already were on the map, but it to me gave you even more credibility. Just retell the story as you recall it, that draft day.
Well, it was a draft. It was a little early on. If you remember, it was the whole Trev Alberts, Trent Dilfer. And I said, hey, it shouldn't have been Trev. It should have been Trent because, Jim Harbaugh had a year, which wasn't that impressive with Indy. I thought they needed that quarterback. So go Trent Dilfer over Trev Alberts.
Okay, so they picked Marshall Faulk
earlier.
Right?
Yes, they got Marshall Faulk and Trev Alberts. So this was not about Marshall. This was all about Trev and Trent. So that was the Trev and Trent.
It was.
So I said Trent Dilfer would have been the pick here instead of Trev. And that was it. Made the comments. That was it. We're moving on, right? Joe Theismann, great friends. Joe's right there with me. Boomer, we're talking about the next pick. And I remember Freddie Godelli, legend, another great friend. Freddie's in my ear saying, Mel, we're coming back to you after Bill Tobin finishes his comments with Mort. Right? Our great friend Chris Mortensen's interviewing Bill Tobin. And I had no idea because I'm talking to Joe. That's off on a side monitor. I didn't even know what was going on, Skip. So I'm talking to Joe, and Joe's like, I don't know. I said, Freddie, what's happening? He said, just know Tobin's ripping you about what you said about Alberts and Dilfer, and I want you to comment. So they came back. I looked in the camera and said, hey, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I don't remember exactly. It was kind of like everybody's entitled to their opinion. I feel, hey, I have an opinion. He has his feeling, whatever I said, and that was it. And we moved on. And ironically, Trent Dilfer comes back to Baltimore, my hometown, born and raised, and wins the Super Bowl for the Baltimore Ravens.
He did.
And, Trev, I ended up working with at ESPN.
You did.
So, we worked together at ESPN. Great guy. So it just kind of came full circle. And Jim Harbaugh, after that year, had a good year. Remember, he almost led the Colts to the Super Bowl. If it wasn't for a play in the end zone, it could have been caught. A pass to Jim through.
Should have been caught.
Could have been caught. Yeah, and would have beat the Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
That is correct.
And moved on. So Jim ended up doing what he did. Trev ended up, working, like I said, with me at ESPN, and Trent ended up winning a Super Bowl for my Baltimore Ravens. So it's amazing how that all came full circle.
Trev, by the way, is still going strong. He's the Texas A&M athletic director as we speak. So,
yeah, exactly. Everybody's doing great there. But, I never met Bill Tobin, never talked to Bill. I think I saw him in the Senior Bowl it was way away from me. Never came in contact with Bill thereafter. Bill, and I always said I defended Bill. He had a right to say what he did.
Sure.
Yeah, he's defending his players, his draft picks. A good friend of mine at the time and throughout his life, one of my best friends in the NFL was Buddy Ryan. Buddy was one of my best friends, and Rex and Rob. And Buddy I knew would defend what I was doing and always had my back on everything.
Yeah.
And Buddy was a great friend. But for Bill, I understood why he did what he did. Never had a problem with that. And we just moved on, and but that obviously put everybody center stage to follow what were the careers going to be for those different players that were mentioned in that whole conversation.
So this is what hit home to me that day. Mm-hmm. That Bill Tobin said, who the hell is Mel Kiper? But he made the very pointed point that Mel never put on a jock strap. Mm-hmm. I have, as you know, lived for years on debate shows in which ex-star athletes have often come back at me. You don't know because you didn't play. And I always throw out so many examples in all sports. Let's do Howie Roseman right here, right now. Mm-hmm. To me, he's at this moment the best GM in football. And he didn't play high school football, didn't even play at the high school level. So it just doesn't matter whether you played, because sometimes you find if they did play at a high level, they're not very good at doing what you do because they can't see the forest for the trees. It came so, not that they didn't work hard, but it came so naturally. They don't have the underachiever or overachiever thing going on where the overachiever can see why he can play and he can't play to the point that when you got ripped for you never wore a jock strap, it won my heart because I said, yeah, but he still knows. He does his homework, his legwork, and you've always had, it's an it's actually a gift, a natural gift. You can see who can play and who can't, and you have backed it up repeatedly for years.
Well, Skip, you make mistakes. You have some direct hits and mocks and predictions and things like that and analysis. But at the end of the day, I think what I always felt like when that occurred was the fans. And I think fans gravitated to somebody who now is being criticized for having an opinion. And I always say, and I respect every fans that they're doing it on the internet now, Skip. Look at the millions of people that follow the draft. Look at the mock drafts that pop up on your internet every second of the day. Look at the amount of fans.
You spawned them all. They all came from you.
But they all have opinions that are valued and respected. And I talked to a lot of them. Frank Corrado is a good friend of mine. Frank still emails me about his opinions. He won one of the predictions at the New York at the draft. He follows it. His son is a coach. Bottom line is, you think about all these people that invested in it. Doesn't matter if they played, they didn't play. They still have knowledge. They still have opinions that I value. Yeah. And I think when you say you don't, that it hit home with a lot of fans that, hey, you're critiquing me now because I have a right to an opinion, even though I'm not coaching, whatever. Fans still have a right to an opinion, whether you would like it, agree with it, or you don't. They have a right to that opinion. And I felt like that's kind of what I think fans, that's what my business was built on, Skip. My business was built by fans all over not only in the United States, all over the world. We got a ton of customers from all over the world getting that draft report. Peter King always says, Mel, bring back the blue book. Peter, no.
The blue book,
the blue book was the blue book. And that was the one that ended in 2013 because of the internet. Everything was going on the internet. But it started in 1979 and ended in 2013. So the blue book was the fans. The fans drove that ship. They were the reason why that business was what it was. And the fans were the ones that I knew then, before anybody else did, told me time and again, Skip, they look more forward to the draft they did the NFL start of the regular season or college football. And I'm not talking about one or two fans. I'm talking about hundreds told me the exact same thing.
Okay.
So they all said the draft to them is more important, more special. And they look more forward to those days of the NFL draft than they do the NFL regular season and the college football regular season.
I'm there. My heart is in this, just as you just described.